Helena Duarte was only 29 years old and already a respected name at international conferences. On her computer screen, her reports shone with numbers that would make any investor smile. On the outside, everyone saw her as an example of resilience, the young CEO who, even after an accident that left her in a wheelchair, built a company from scratch. But what no one could see was the silence when she closed her apartment door. That heavy silence, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock marking each painfully slow second. Helena ran her fingers over the wheels of her chair, gazing out the window. Down below, couples strolled hand in hand, laughing about silly things. She murmured to herself, "I can laugh at silly things too, if only someone gave me the chance." Her strength was in business, but her heart, that one lived locked behind invisible bars. It had been 5 years since the accident, and she had learned to handle everything: ramps, narrow doors, curious stares. What she never learned was how to handle loneliness. That night, her friend and assistant, Clara, called her on the phone. Clara's cheerful voice contrasted with Helena's fatigue. "Girl, you need to get out of that shell. I set up a date for you. An amazing guy, a lawyer, cultured, charming. It's going to be great." Helena closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "Clara, we've been through this. Nobody really wants to be with someone like me." "What do you mean, someone like you?" Clara shot back, indignant. "You're brilliant, beautiful, funny, brilliant on stage, lonely at home," Helena replied, and with a short, bitter laugh. Silence on the other end of the line. Clara knew it was useless to argue, but she wouldn't give up. "At least try, Helena. Just one night. If it goes wrong, I'll never insist again." Helena looked once more at the bright street below. The laughter of couples echoed like mockery. Part of her wanted to hang up and forget the whole thing, but another part, deep down inside, whispered, "What if this time is different?" Her heart wavered between hope and fear. In the reflection of the glass, she saw a strong woman, but with tired eyes. "One night," she said, "finally, just one." And so, without realizing it, Helena took the first step toward the meeting that would change her life. She believed she was about to face yet another disappointment. But life had prepared a mistake that would change everything. That night, after hanging up the phone with Clara, Helena stood in front of the mirror. The yellowish light from the bedside lamp highlighted her delicate features, but she didn't see any beauty there. All she saw was the wheelchair reflected beside her. Memories rose like powerful waves. One of them still hurt more than all the others. 3 years ago, a man had approached her at a conference, charismatic, intelligent. He seemed captivated by her every word. She agreed to have dinner with him. At the restaurant, Helena noticed how his eyes kept darting toward the chair. At the start of the evening, he smiled. By the end, his answers had become dry, automatic. When the waiter brought the bill, the man cleared his throat and said, "You know, I really admire your strength, but I don't think I'm ready for something so different." And then he left. Helena remained there, alone, staring at the still full glass of wine. That moment felt as if someone had turned off the last light in the hallway she had been trying to walk down. She closed her eyes in front of the mirror and murmured, "I never want to feel that again." But it hadn't been just that one episode. How many times, on dating apps, had the conversation simply died the moment she mentioned her condition? How many pitying looks, how many lines like, "You deserve someone special," always said by those who never wanted to be that someone. Those memories were invisible scars, hidden beneath the steady posture of a businesswoman. She knew how to give speeches about technology, inspire audiences, lead teams. But to talk about herself, about the woman behind the title, that was dangerous territory. As she got ready for the date Clara had arranged, Helena recalled all those pains. Her stomach churned. She put on a navy blue dress, discreet, elegant. She applied red lipstick like armor against judgment. Deep down, she repeated to herself, "It's just dinner, nothing more." But behind that sentence was fear. Fear of being rejected again. Fear of hearing once more that she wasn't enough, and at the same time, there was also a tiny thread of hope. A whisper, barely audible, saying, "Maybe this time will be different." Helena took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and headed to the restaurant. What she didn't know was that this night would not end like the others. A small detail, one completely out of her control, would change everything. The restaurant Clara had chosen was the Meridian, known for its low lighting, dark wooden tables, and a soft piano playing in the background. It was sophisticated, elegant, and intimidating. Helena arrived promptly at 8. She had made sure to call ahead to confirm accessibility, ramps, adapted restroom, space between tables. When she entered, a polite waiter escorted her to the reserved table. The flickering candlelight reflected in the glass of water they served her. She adjusted her dress over her legs, trying to disguise her nervousness. Her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance every minute, as if watching a door of hope. Her phone vibrated. A short message. "Sorry, something came up. We need to reschedule. Signed, J. Morrison." Her heart dropped like a stone. Helena took a deep breath, forcing a smile for herself. Of course. I knew this could happen. But her inner bitter voice wouldn't forgive. It's not because he got busy. It's because he saw you, saw the chair. The waiter approached discreetly. "Ma'am, your guest won't be coming." Helena lifted her gaze, keeping her composure. "Change of plans. Just the water, please." And it was at that moment she heard a hesitant male voice right behind her. "Excuse me, but are you Helena Duarte?" She turned slowly. A man in his early 30s. Dark hair slightly tousled. Simple shirt, jeans. He didn't match the refined atmosphere of the restaurant at all. But the eyes, there was a mix of respect and genuine curiosity in them. "I'm David," he introduced himself, scratching the back of his neck, visibly awkward. "I think there's been some confusion. My sister, Emma, and your friend Clara said she'd set me up on a date, and she described someone very much like you." Helena furrowed her brow. "Your sister works where?" "In the marketing department of your company." "Emma Chen." Helena blinked, surprised. Suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. Clara had arranged a date with a lawyer, but had considered another option in case it didn't work out. Clara and Emma had planned to introduce her to Emma's brother, a mechanic. Two different plans, two overlapping intentions, and now, standing there before her, was the wrong candidate. David smiled slightly. "I know I'm not the sophisticated lawyer you were expecting to meet, but since we're here, maybe we could talk." Helena studied him for a moment. There was no trace of pity on his face, only a calm, almost shy patience. Helena took a deep breath before replying. "Well, this wasn't exactly the date I was expecting," she said, raising an eyebrow. David laughed, unoffended. "Neither was mine, but I admit this is the kind of mistake I don't mind experiencing." They were led to a table in the corner. The waiter brought wine. Helena asked only for sparkling water. At first, silence hung between them. David, breaking the ice. "So, you're an architect, right? Emma always talks about the brilliant boss who sketches crazy projects on napkins." Helena widened her eyes, laughing softly. "She said that? My God, I'm going to have a serious talk with your sister." Gradually, the weight of nervousness began to lift. Helena noticed that David didn't glance at her wheelchair with any awkwardness. He simply looked her in the eyes. There were small details. When she spoke, he leaned forward to listen better. When she joked, he laughed genuinely, not out of politeness. But there was also a curious side to David. "You know, I'm a mechanic, hands always covered in grease, motors in pieces. I never imagined having dinner at a place like this." Helena smiled, surprised by his honesty. "Maybe that's what life is, David. Two worlds that would never cross until someone decides to mix the paths." He gazed at her in silence for a moment. Then he spoke softly, almost like a confession. "I think I like that." In that moment, Helena felt a spark. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something rare, immediate, genuine respect. The following days felt lighter for Helena. David sent simple messages. "Good morning, architect. Don't forget to have lunch. Today I'll tell you the story of the car that blew blue smoke in the middle of the avenue." Nothing fancy, nothing rehearsed. But they were words that made her smile amidst her routine. "Curious?" Clara asked. "So, how was the lawyer?" Helena dodged, feeling a bit guilty. He didn't show up. "What? But someone else did." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Mischievous. Someone else. And—" Helena sighed, unable to hide the sparkle in her eyes. "He's different." The dates multiplied. Casual coffees, walks in the park, quick visits to David's workshop, where the smell of burnt oil and the sound of hammers echoed like background music. David showed his grease-stained hands and said, laughing, "My jewels don't shine, but they bring engines back to life." And Helena, watching, felt something strange. He wasn't trying to impress her, he simply was. But along with hope came fear. On the third outing, Helena commented, "You know you don't have to pretend everything's fine with me, right?" David furrowed his brow. "Pretend? Yes. The chair, the limitations. I know it's not easy." He leaned in, serious, steady. "Helena, I'm not here despite the chair. I'm here because of who you are." She remained silent, touched. But inside her, doubt pulsed. Could someone like him, so free, so different, really love someone like me? It was a Friday night when David took Helena to dinner at a small neighborhood restaurant. Nothing fancy, simple wooden tables. The smell of sautéed garlic in the air, waiters rushing back and forth. Helena felt at ease, laughing at a story about an old car he had repaired, when she noticed two women at the next table whispering. One of them blatantly glanced at the wheelchair, then at David, and let out a mocking laugh. Helena felt her chest tighten. David noticed too. "Ignore them," he said, trying to reassure her. But she couldn't. The food lost its flavor, and the candles on the table seemed to illuminate her vulnerability even more. On the way back, Helena ventured, "You don't care what people think." David took a deep breath. "Of course it bothers me. But I've learned that living for other people's looks is the worst kind of prison." She wanted to believe him, but the reopened wound of rejection still bled inside her. Days later, Helena visited the workshop. She found David sweaty, his shirt smeared with grease, laughing with an elderly client. The scene seemed simple, yet it stirred something strange in her. A corrosive thought crept in. He deserves someone who fits into this world of his, not someone who needs ramps and adaptations for every step of life. To make matters worse, that same afternoon, David's phone rang. Helena didn't hear the whole conversation, but she caught one phrase, spoken in a serious tone. "I already said I'll pay. Give me more time." When he returned, he smiled as if nothing had happened, but his eyes betrayed a heavy burden. Helena didn't ask. She tucked the doubt deep in her chest. Saturday dawned rainy. Helena was at the office, trying to review a project, but her thoughts kept drifting back to David. That phrase from the phone wouldn't leave her mind. "I'll pay. Give me more time." Early in the afternoon, he appeared unexpectedly, carrying a bag with fresh bread and hot coffee. "I thought you could use a break," he said, with that disarming smile. Helena accepted, but unease lingered. As he set up the makeshift table, she couldn't hold back. "David, yesterday, you seemed worried on the phone. Is something going on?" For a moment, his smile faded. He ran a hand through his hair, took a deep breath, and finally said, "I didn't want to involve you in this, but maybe it's time to be honest." Helena straightened in her chair, her heart racing. "Involve me in what?" David hesitated, then let it out all at once. "The workshop isn't doing well. I took out some loans to expand, to buy tools and hire helpers, but things didn't go as planned. Now I owe more than I can pay." Helena fell silent. He continued, "I'm not that perfect guy you think I am. I'm just a mechanic trying not to sink, and sometimes I feel ashamed for you to see this." The words hit her chest hard. On one hand, she felt compassion. On the other, fear grew. Did he enter my life just to bring more instability? She tried to soften the blow. "You don't have to carry this alone." But David shook his head. "I do, because if I can't handle it, I'll lose everything." The silence between them grew heavy. Helena looked at the man in front of her and realized, behind the strength and good humor, there was a heart fighting its own battles, and they were far from simple. The following days were confusing. David was still present, but there was something different in his eyes. He seemed distracted, always keeping his phone close, as if waiting for bad news at any moment. Helena tried to convince herself it was just a phase, but insecurity gnawed at her. On Tuesday, during a quick dinner at her place, she ventured, "Are you sure you want this, David? I mean, us." He looked up, surprised. "Of course I do. Why are you asking?" "Because it feels like there's a part of you that's never here." David sighed, looking away. "Helena, I just don't want to drag you into my problems." She pressed her lips together. "But when you push me away, it hurts more than any problem I could share with you." Silence settled. David stood up, walked to the window, and stood there, unmoving. "Maybe you're better off without me," he murmured. Those words felt like a punch. Helena felt tears burning her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "If that's what you think, then maybe you should go." David hesitated for a moment, but ended up grabbing his keys. Before leaving, he cast one last look at her, a look full of restrained pain. The door slammed. Helena was left alone, her heart in pieces. The feeling was cruelly familiar, abandoned once again. She spent the night awake, remembering the first time someone had rejected her because of the chair, and now, once again, she felt her disability condemning her to emptiness. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, David drove aimlessly. He parked in front of the darkened workshop, staring at the building as if it were an enemy. "I'm going to lose everything," he whispered to himself. "And now, I'm going to lose her too." 2 days passed with no messages, no phone calls. Helena tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting back to David. Is it over? Did I push him away myself? That afternoon, she got a call from Clara, sounding alarmed. "Helena, are you sitting down?" "Of course." "Clara." "I'm always sitting." Helena tried to joke, but her friend's voice was far too serious. "This isn't the time for jokes. I just saw David. He was arguing with 2 huge men in front of the workshop. It looked dangerous." Helena's heart raced. Without thinking twice, she asked her driver to take her there. When she arrived, the scene was already fading. The men had left, but David was leaning against his car, breathless, his hands trembling. "David!" she called. He turned, startled. "Helena, what are you doing here?" "Clara told me." "What's going on?" David hesitated, but this time he couldn't hide it. "They're debt collectors. If I don't pay by the end of the month, I'll lose the workshop." Helena moved closer, her eyes locked on his. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" "Because I didn't want you to think I'm a failure." She drew in a deep breath, feeling pain and tenderness collide. "David, do you know what the biggest mistake of my life was?" she asked. He shook his head. thinking I had to look perfect to be loved. A heavy silence fell between them. David let out a nervous laugh. So we're in the same boat, huh? Helena smiled for the first time in days. Exactly the same boat. Two imperfect people trying to row together. In that instant, something broke, not between them, but within them. The wall of pride, fear, and shame crumbled. David stepped forward and gripped her hand tightly. I don't want to lose you, Helena. Even if everything falls apart, I don't want to lose you. She squeezed his hand back. Then stop pushing me away. Let me be here. The following weeks were tough. David worked from dawn to dusk trying to save the workshop. Helena, in turn, split her time between the office and discreet visits, bringing food, advice, and, above all, companionship. One night, he found her sitting over the plans for a new architecture project. "What's this?" he asked, curious. She smiled, biting her lip. "A partnership proposal. I want to invest in your workshop, pay off the debts, and together transform this space into a model of accessibility and innovation. Not as your savior, David, but as your partner." He was speechless. "Helena, I can't accept this. I don't want you to think I'm with you for money." She stepped closer, resolute. "It's not about money. It's about believing in the same dream. You have the soul. I have the resources. If we walk together, no one can bring us down." David swallowed hard. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine not just surviving, but building something greater, and not alone. On the day of the inauguration of the workshop's new phase, friends, neighbors, and clients filled the space. Wide ramps, modern tools, adapted areas. The debts were paid off, and the workshop, now expanded, was not just a recovered business. It was a symbol of the new life they were building side by side. Helena watched everything with tears in her eyes. David approached, whispering, "I never thought my workshop could be beautiful." "It's not just beautiful," she replied. "It's free." Months later, already recovered from the storm, they were together on her balcony, looking at the illuminated city. David pulled her close. "You know, if it weren't for that disastrous date, we'd never be here." Helena laughed softly. "Sometimes it's the mistake that leads to the right path. And you think the two of us are the right path?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "I have no doubts." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. Two imperfect hearts, patched together, yet beating in the same rhythm. Sometimes life convinces us that we are too flawed to be loved. Other times, we believe we need to hide our imperfections to deserve companionship. But the truth is simple. When two people truly decide to join forces, even the heaviest debts and the hardest burdens can become bridges to something greater. And who knows, the next person to enter your life might just be the right encounter that changes everything. If this story touched you, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next ones. Subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with me.